What's up, everyone? We have to talk about this Cleanspark news. Everyone's freaking out about it. Cleanspark announced pricing of 550 million convertible note offering. A lot of companies have been doing this lately, if you guys have noticed. Unlike some of the companies, Cleanspark plans to buy some shares with this. With this 550 million, they plan to repurchase 145 million of common stock, or Cleanspark shares, and they also got into these capped call transactions with an initial cap price of $24.66 per share. And I'm not too familiar with what capped call transactions are, but this has to do with convertible notes. And basically, capped call transactions, according to AI, can increase the conversion rate of convertible notes, reduce the risk of dilution, which is positive, and potentially provide tax benefits. And the call option strike price is equal to the bond's conversion price. If the share price at conversion is above the cap price, the dealer doesn't provide additional value to the issuer. Here's an example with Uber. Uber had 2028 convertible notes with a conversion price of 72 per share. A cap call transaction increased the dilution threshold, so the dilution was only available once it got to 95.81 per share. From my understanding, this is a positive thing. And from my understanding, Cleanspark wouldn't be able to dilute until we get over this 24.66 per share, but correct me if I'm wrong. Speaking of dilution, this is something we should be expecting. Cleanspark was the not just one of, but the most diluted miner in the last cycle, if you guys remember. What did price still do? It went parabolic regardless. Wall Street was watching the Bitcoin miners for profitability, and they did achieve it, and I think they're going to achieve it. Cleanspark's expecting it starting in Q4, which will be reported in early 2025. But in the meantime, these stocks, when they announce dilution, and even after profitability, if they do announce dilution, they will get pushed down. This is obviously seen sometimes as a negative. Now I'm talking about just dilution. This news, in my opinion, is mixed. There is some positive, there is some negative. Look at institutions. Have they been buying? Have they been selling? They have been buying. They have been loading up on Cleanspark. They know to buy low, to buy during the fear, and to sell high. Sell when retail is interested. Sell when retail is bullish. Retail is definitely not bullish. Even the people that hold Cleanspark aren't bullish. They're ready to get out. While institutions are loading up, and while institutions are very bullish, you have some of the most bearish retail I've ever seen. Probably more bearish than when we were under $2. Now, continuing on, because we didn't finish this and we have some more things to look over, Cleanspark has also granted these purchasers of these convertible notes an option that expires in about 2 weeks to purchase up to another $100 million worth of these convertible notes, bringing it to about $650 million. Now, some companies have been posting this news and saying they're going to buy Bitcoin and kind of utilize a MicroStrategy strategy. I personally think that would have been a good idea from Cleanspark. I personally think they would have seen a positive reaction. Other Bitcoin miners have seen positive reactions on this news when they announced that they're going to use convertible notes to buy Bitcoin. Wall Street sees that the convertible notes have plenty of time to expire. Wall Street knows that there's still some juice left to this cycle, and news like that has been causing a spike. News like this, when we don't get news of buying Bitcoin too, in some cases does cause a spike. I'll show you in a second with Hut 8 what happened there. They too announced a share purchase program. They too announced dilution, although there are some nuances between each. But what does Cleanspark plan to use these proceeds for? They aren't going to be buying Bitcoin necessarily, and they've said that in their call. That is not their goal. Their goal, instead of buying Bitcoin, is to grow. And I think honestly that makes sense. If they're going to ever pass Marathon, they need to grow their hash rate. But one thing can be said about buying Bitcoin expecting a quick return, utilizing that money to grow faster because you made gains off Bitcoin. I think it would be smart for them to buy some Bitcoin with this. This would be the time. But who knows, maybe I'm wrong and Bitcoin tanks in early 2025 and Marathon looks like idiots for buying. But you can't predict that. I personally think that Marathon made a wise decision. Oh my god. I personally think that Marathon made a wise decision. That took me like 4 takes for some reason. It's a tongue twister. But I think they're smart for buying Bitcoin. They saw that Wall Street is reacting positively to announcements like that. Cleanspark sees the theme as well, that all these companies are getting into these convertible note offerings. They also mentioned in their call, capital markets are looking more and more attractive. So we'll probably see more and more of these companies announcing convertible note offerings. But anyways, I keep getting sidetracked. My bad. They plan to use these convertible notes of 535 million or 633 million if they decide on that additional 100 million, the purchaser of the convertible notes. But after deducting the initial discounts and estimated payables, the company plans to use 76 million of the net proceeds from the offering. Assuming no exercise of these convertible notes, they plan to pay the cost of the cap call transactions. They plan to use 145 million to repurchase shares of their stock, and the remaining roughly maybe 400-ish million or so for the repayment in full of amounts outstanding, meaning debt, their line of credit with Coinbase, capital expenditures, recent acquisitions like Grid, and general corporate purposes. These convertible notes mature on June 15, 2030. well after the next halving. So we have this whole cycle and all of next cycle. And also, they may not redeem their convertible notes before June 20 of 28, so before the next halving, basically. Now, I want to show you that we have something similar from HUT that was announced in early December. I'll show you what the chart did, just to kind of give you a picture. But they announced a similar thing, you know, 500 million ATM, but this is a little different. This, to me, seems like it would be a little more dilution. Although their repurchase program was heavier as well, so that kind of offsets it, I'd say. But their purchase program was 250 million, their ATM was 500 million. But they also gave a third update where they're doing convertible notes. But see, these companies are trying to be flexible. Cleanspark, HUT, they're trying to have the ability to buy shares if they want to. They want to have the ability to dilute if they want to. I think having that optionality for these companies is a positive thing, is something that gives them strength. Of course, from a shareholder standpoint, you're hearing dilution and you're like, oh shit, I don't want that. And that's understandable. But when you realize what happened last cycle, when you realize that these companies, we will get dilution here and there, they will use this dilution to grow. The ones that dilute the most are probably going to catch up to the ones that dilute the least. That's just how it goes. Now, what happened with this HUT 8 news? While it is slightly different than Cleanspark, I would expect a similar reaction at some point. HUT 8 reacted positively pretty much when HUT 8 received this news. It started rallying, actually. It went from about $25 to about $31, a 29% move. At that time, we were also getting some bullish RSI divergence. The RSI was starting to pick up, but the price was still bottoming out. So that RSI divergence basically marked the bottom as well. And we got that reversal. We got a gap up and it did rally. What about Cleanspark? So far, not so good. We got a negative reaction on the news after hours. We broke that 13 I was talking about that I thought was a pretty important pivot point. And it does look like we got a bit of a reaction from it. Now, we are trying to hold up literally like right over this gap. There's a gap in the 11s. We basically bounced right over it. If we can get one big red day that fills this gap, that'd be fantastic. Otherwise, is this going to be a gap that doesn't fill until the next bear market? Very possible. Now, I will leave all of this down below for you guys to read over it yourself, but we will see news like this. The positive is there's a share buyback attached to it. Normally, it's just dilution. But in all seriousness, we will see dilution from these Bitcoin miners at times. This is an aggressive growing game. The ones that grow the most aggressively will lead the pack. The ones that don't try to grow aggressively, the ones that don't dilute. Bitcoin mining is a very competitive environment. If you're not diluting and your peers are, you are going to get passed up. And like I said, Cleanspark was the most dilutive miner last cycle. If they didn't do that, if they weren't that dilutive, they would have faded into obscurity. This company before 2020, they were a microgrid company making under $10 million a quarter. At times they are having profitability. In the group, they are one of the most consistently profitable. In the group, they have the most consistent uptime. And for me, Cleanspark is my highest conviction miner. Just to clear the air, I don't get any compensation, and I never will and never have from Cleanspark. I have never talked to any of the execs or anyone involved with Cleanspark. I simply believe in the stock. I have conviction. I know what I own. That said, it also isn't the only stock I own. And some of you might be way too heavy, and it definitely shows. People that are losing sleep at night over a small cap with an announcement like this, I don't think that's very healthy. So if you're too heavy and you're not really bullish on it, maybe you need to reconsider. But anyways, thanks as always for watching, guys, and have a good weekend.